Welcome to the CDG BizCast. I'm your host, Christian Gonzalez, co-owner of Creativity Design Group, a digital marketing firm in Houston, Texas. Today, we have Chef Michael Brown of Jamburritos joining us once again to talk to us about restaurant and food service efficiency. During this time of the year, it's important to ensure that restaurants are able to take care of every single customer without any issues. We're going to talk about methods that'll help make sure that restaurants are able to serve every single customer and that each one leaves with a smile on their face. Restaurant owners will especially want to listen to this episode as we talk about what they can do to prevent food shortages, refunds, and any other unfortunate situation that could possibly ruin a customer's holiday meal. So Michael, welcome back to the show once again. It's great to have you. The first thing I want to talk to you about is ensuring that customers get everything that they pay for. There are a lot of vendors and restaurants, many different businesses that customers can choose from to buy their holiday meals, whether it be for Thanksgiving or for Christmas. You know that I am a huge proponent of supporting small businesses. However, there are some people out there who are pretending to be small businesses, but in reality, they are just trying to rip people off. They are food service scam companies. And one recent incident that happened just this past Thanksgiving involves a small catering company based out of Deer Park who listed their business as a food stand. They advertised online. They had Thanksgiving meals for sale. However, many of the families who purchased these meals, they never received their food. They spent between $200 and $300 each to get their meals, only to never receive their food. It resulted in families having to run to Kroger to buy chickens and look for other alternatives. They were just scrambling, looking for meals because this company basically stole their money. When they tried to contact them, they gave every excuse in the book over why they wouldn't talk to customers. They claimed that their phone lines were shut down. They were overloaded with messages. They couldn't alert their customers of any issues that were going on. In addition to that, they wrote that they ran out of food, their oven caught fire, and they didn't have any money for refunds. They were given every excuse in the book not to refund their money. They made themselves hard to contact. Now, Michael, as a food service professional, as a chef, as someone who has owned a restaurant in the past, what would you like to tell these families who got ripped off by this catering company? And what advice would you give to people in the future who are planning their meals for next year to ensure that this never happens to them again, that they buy their food from a legitimate company, a restaurant catering company, and that they do not get ripped off?
Yeah. Hey, Christian, thank you for having me on your show, your podcast. I always enjoy speaking to you and speaking to your clientele about the hospitality industry, about food, and how we can raise the bar and improve on the customers' experiences and help professionals enter into this business or even thrive in this business. So that's a sad situation that happened that you shared. And I would first like to say that I I think it's not common. It doesn't happen all the time, but happening at all is not a good thing. And so it is important that our consumer is an educated consumer. And it is also important that those of us who call ourselves professionals in the industry must conduct ourselves in such a way that we will actually help uplift the industry and meet the demands. So the holiday season is always the greatest and the hardest time for restaurateurs or any food service operation to try to meet the needs that are the demands, because the demands are really high at that time. And there's a lot of people vying for that business, especially nowadays when people are not cooking as much. I mean, I see more and more Thanksgiving meals catered out as opposed to families cooking. People are coming from all over the country to celebrate these festivities. And so you do have a heavy volume going towards the caterers and the food service operators. So I should say that's a problem. That's an opportunity. For example, Mother's Day. We've chosen not to go out on Mother's Day because even though it's a special time for mothers, you're always going to get pretty much the worst service and even sometimes, low par food and pay a lot of money for it. So, but for those who do, here's some things that you can do to give the probability that you're going to experience a really, really good time with the food that you're purchasing, and your guests will be happy. So one, I'm going to list a few different things here. One is read the reviews. So if you're going to use someone that you've never heard of before, read the reviews, those that you have heard of before, because some of these chains will have different locations that do jobs better than other locations. So read the reviews on your specific location, and this way you can kind of figure out what's important to you. When you're reading a review, if the person says the food was cold, that could be a pain point for you that you want to necessarily not have that situation happen. Say the person was rude, so whatever is important to you, hot food, courteous service, on-time delivery, value for your money, whatever is important to you, read the reviews in light of all of that. The other thing you can do is ask for references. Ask for references from the caterer that you're dealing with to see if they would, in fact, give you a few names of people that you can call and find out how their experience was. Another thing is you can order a small portion. Sometimes, before you commit to, 20 meals or 100 meals for your family gatherings, try to do business with them on a smaller scale so that you can determine the quality of their food and their ability to deliver what they promise. Check their social media. Look at nextdoor.com. Check the BBB, Better Business Bureau. Better Business Bureau is one of the best ways to get resolutions to business challenges that you have out there, because no one wants to have a complaint on the Better Business Bureau. Another thing, going back to reviews, see how they respond to negative reviews, or if they do respond at all. A company that doesn't respond to reviews is a company that may not be someone you want to invest your time and money in. Consider the location of the facility. Possibly visit the location. If the location is in a neighborhood that, don't normally do business in, maybe that's not the place for you. If you get a chance to get inside their operation, check out for cleanliness and all those other things that you would be interested in. Consider not giving a not so well-known company a portion of your catering to see how they perform. So I read that kind of wrong. These are my notes here. But what I'm saying here is that you don't have to use one caterer or one operation to supply the whole event. You can use the caterer you want to give an opportunity to, because Christian, we all want to support small businesses. You want to give them an opportunity, but maybe you don't give them the entire order. You give a portion of that order to them, and then you give the rest of the order to either a well-known or someone that you've used in the past. So those would be my major points on what customers can do to ensure that they are purchasing meals from legitimate catering companies and exploring their options, companies that are not so well known.
Those are all great points, and I can never stop stressing the importance of due diligence. People need to do their due diligence. They need to evaluate every single little aspect that they can: location, facility, reviews, and references. All are very important factors that you mentioned there. And going back to the fact that this company is a small business and had the appearance of a small business, they were operating out of their garage, basically. And some of the biggest well-known names out there started in their garage or out of their home. But sadly, this happens to be one scenario where there was not a story of success. There was just a story of heartbreak, hardship, grief, and thievery. All of these families who purchased their meals from this company got ripped off. And it's just extremely heartbreaking to hear that this happened to them. So if any of those victims of that scam are listening to this right now, I just want to say I'm sorry that happened to you. I hope that your Christmas went a lot better and that you have recovered from the Thanksgiving fiasco, and that next year you'll have a good game plan to get your Thanksgiving and Christmas meals to your family without any problem. Companies that don't have a lot of reviews online or only have maybe one or two, I would be very careful with them, even if they're 5-star reviews. Now, if they're 1 to 2-star, 3-star reviews, those are red flags right there that you got to look out for. Be careful with those. Look for restaurants and catering companies that are well known, have established their presence pretty well online, and appear to be an authority in the food service industry. And that counts with small businesses too. Small businesses can have authority just as well as large corporations and chains have. While we're on the topic of providing good service and ensuring that customers leave with a smile on their face, I want to talk to you about another unfortunate incident that happened also here in the Houston area. This incident is related to the Cracker Barrel in League City. So what happened was many families ordered their Thanksgiving meals from the Cracker Barrel in League City, and it seemed like things were going well, that they were on track to get their food. However, one customer shared their story over what happened. They received an email at 11:30 on Wednesday night, the day before Thanksgiving. The email woke them up. They were in bed, and it woke them up. He checked the email and found out at 6:30 in the morning that they ran out of food. They sent the email at 11:30 p.m. at night. The customer saw it at 6:30 a.m. in the morning when they woke up and found out that Cracker Barrel could not fulfill their order. And when they called to get an answer, they didn't receive good customer service either. They asked for a manager. The employee who answered the phone at the restaurant said that the manager could not speak to them because they were busy, and they just tried calling back. They were also informed by the Cracker Barrel employee that they were not the only customer facing this problem. They were informed at the very last minute that the restaurant ran out of food and they could not fulfill the orders. Our previous episode was on retail efficiency, and we discussed the importance of making sure that inventory is accurate and that you have enough items in stock to fulfill all of your orders for Christmas shopping. It's a very busy time of the year. A lot of people who do their shopping online often place back orders if an item's out of stock, and it's important to make sure that the store is able to receive a new shipment of these high demand items before the Christmas shopping season ends. Even though that's retail, the same exact principle applies in the restaurant industry. Just like with retail stores, you want to make sure that you have enough of your high demand items in stock so you can fulfill each order, that there's no back orders or having to give refunds. And it sounds to me that Cracker Barrel in League City was not ready to take on Thanksgiving orders. They should have been prepared. They should have had enough turkeys available to fulfill the demand of the season, but apparently they didn't. So my question for you, Michael, is what should restaurants do to ensure that they do not end up in the same scenario as this Cracker Barrel and avoid running out of food? So far, it sounds like that only the League City location faced this problem.
Well, Christian, that's a sad situation. And unfortunately, these things from time to time do happen. I would have hoped that they would have given them more notice than just the night before. But I believe that it's not necessarily the avoidance of bad situations or the elimination of them, but it's how you handle it. I would wonder if, in fact, how they tried to make amends. Did they go in and give them a refund right away and then maybe some gift certificates for a future date? I remember one time I had a catering gig for the Phoenix Suns dance team, and I made the mistake and forgot the order. And so at the last minute, I had to hustle, go to my competitor because I wasn't even prepared with the food. I didn't have the inventory, purchase the food from them, run it down to the Phoenix Suns, give them the food gratuitously, and then we funded 100% of their money. So it cost me a lot of money, but it was important for my integrity to make sure that I did everything I could to overcome the mistake that I made. But like I said, these things do happen. And every year we try to get better and better at it. One of the mantras that I try to live by is to under promise and over deliver. That's sort of like something, an undercurrent for our food service operations. So, for example, we're opening up Jamburritos Cajun Grill in Missouri City, first quarter of 2024, Lord willing. And we know we have a lot of, aces in the hole. We have a lot to offer when it comes to quality food, when it comes to chef-driven cuisine, when it comes to fusion cooking, when it comes to the atmosphere and how we provide service. But what I've chosen to do is to overplay the hospitality end of it and let the food be the surprise. Let the food be like, wow, these people are friendly and courteous, have emotional intelligence, and the food is off the chain. So those are surprises that you want to kind of run your operation so that those things can kind of be extras to people. In Louisiana, they have a thing called a lagniappe. A lagniappe is something for nothing. So some people will give you with your jambalaya a praline cookie. That's a lagniappe. Whatever it is, it's something for nothing. So it's a surprise, it's extra. So under promise, over deliver, I would recommend for anybody in the food service industry. Also, that make sure there's always a challenge that happens between marketing and operations. So let's give an example. For example, marketing says we are doing turkey dinners, $20 a person, and these are all the fixings you're going to get with it, and we can order it with 24-hour notice. Orders will close at such and such a date and time. And, all of the various details that you'll see on a marketing flyer or on a billboard or different ways. And then all of this information is put out to the general public, but the staff has not been apprised of what we're actually doing. So the customer comes in and says, hey, I hear you have this, that, and the other. And the staff is kind of scratching their head. They're like, oh, really? So I've always emphasized that marketing and operations have to work hand in hand. Anything that we do on the marketing side has to be broadcast. The vision has to be casted to the staff, those frontline people that are going to be out there talking to the customer, talking to the guests, and being your advocates for what you provide food and service-wise. The other thing I would say is that make sure each department understands their responsibilities toward any promotion. The guy who's doing all the purchasing for a turkey dinner in the front office or, at the executive table, you're having a conversation about projections. Are we going to do 200 turkey dinners we're projecting? So now what? Purchasing has to line up with that. Their job is also not just to line up with the purchasing aspects of it, maybe see if they can get it for the best price and the best quality. People that are serving on the front line, they have to understand what the portions are. Or the people that are just boxing it up or however you're putting it together. All of those things have to trickle down to the entire operation so that everybody understands what their responsibilities are towards getting this to be a successful experience for our guests. We talked about ordering. Have a backup source. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. So for Jamburritos, we're going to have 2 broadline distributors, and then we'll give sort of like 60-40 of our orders to one versus the other and keep them honest with each other. And then we'll have a couple of local produce suppliers, and that will help us to actually make sure that we ensure that we're able to meet the demand. In the restaurant business also, there's consistency that's important. So maybe one year you do butter something, a brand of turkey, and the next year you do HEB brand or what have you. They have different profiles, different qualities. When you're starting to get into a business where you're looking to have repeat clientele and you may be looking to expand, then finding the same product has consistent quality across the board is going to be key to getting your operation duplicatable. So that's important as well. Staffing accordingly is very important. You typically want to overstaff by about 10%. So if you have to send some people home because business is not supporting it, that's better than having to call people in. Another one would be over preparing by about 10 to 15% when it comes to how much food that you're producing, because you're always going to have that last minute person that comes into town and they're like, you know what? There's nothing available. What can we do? Can you do anything for us? And then you come out like a hero when you have that extra sitting there. I like to always be, even when I was in the food truck business, I always like to be the last man standing, never run out of food. It's not always possible, but it is definitely attainable. If you put in these, I think there are about 6 principles that I mentioned here. Back to you, Christian.
Yes, I agree with you, Michael. I especially agree with you on making sure that marketing and operations are aligned with each other. It certainly doesn't look good on the company if staff is not aware of any promotions that's going on, and especially at a chain restaurant. If it's a chain restaurant and none of the front end staff, such as the wait staff or the servers, are aware of a special that's going on that was made at corporate, that looks bad on the management of that location, because it shows that management was not on the ball in keeping tabs with what corporate has been sending them. Corporate lets the district managers know, then the district managers let the individual managers of the restaurants know. And it's the responsibility of the individual managers of each location to make sure that they are honoring the promotions corporate has already prepared and is ready to roll out. It looks bad in general on the management and the employees of individual locations if they are just completely unaware of what corporate is doing. And then a customer comes in and wants to purchase whatever was in that promotion. Well, when the employees, whether it be the wait staff or the host at the door, whoever they ask about it, they just stare at you like a deer in the headlights. It does not look good. It really is important to make sure that you don't set unrealistic goals either, because that does not help in your overall operations. If you're trying to attain a goal that you know you can't do, but you have it ingrained in your mind that you can get it taken care of without problem, you're just setting yourself up for failure. And of course, making sure that inventory is set properly. Like I said in the previous episode that we taped on retail efficiency, we discussed the importance of making sure that inventory counts are as accurate as possible. There should be no undercount or overcount, because if you don't know exactly what you have in stock in your warehouse or your storage facility, it can be a rude awakening when you try to fulfill an order and then you find out you don't have the product in stock. When you try to fulfill an order for a certain item and then you end up not having that item in stock, resulting in an angry customer. The same exact principle applies in the restaurant industry. When it comes to this time of the year, make sure that you have all of your holiday items in stock, you have ample available, and you're able to fill demand easily. Thanksgiving and Christmas are two of the busiest times of the years for restaurants and retail stores, and especially with restaurants, with people who order their meals, who don't do any cooking at home, and they order pre-made meals, it's important to make sure that you have enough of your holiday menu items in stock. You don't want to be skimping out on these. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of angry customers. I'm pretty sure that the customers of the Leak City Cracker Barrel are not going to be ordering their meals from them anytime soon, if not ever again. I mean, the damage is pretty much done there. In addition to ensuring that you have enough food in stock, enough food items in stock to fulfill the holiday demands, it's also important to remember that food safety is extremely important. It's important to remember that regardless of the hustle and bustle of the holiday season, you have to make sure that every single customer meal is prepared 100% thoroughly, ensuring that people do not get sick because of undercooked meals. It's important to make sure that you prevent any undercooking of holiday meals, especially since you're going to have an influx of customers ordering these. So with that being said, Michael, my next question for you is, what can restaurants do to ensure that meals are prepared in a timely manner while still keeping food safety in mind? In other words, what can restaurants do to exceed their output without skimping on food preparation? I'm saying just to ensure that despite the fact that they have a lot of orders to fulfill, they're not rushing things, which results in certain food items becoming undercooked and raw.
That is a big concern in the restaurant industry, one that most companies take very, very seriously. We've had several restaurant chains go out of business because of improper food handling, foodborne illnesses. Our training starts with health and safety, and I like to also emphasize safety as well as health. I think health is a given. We know that we have thermometers. We have to use them in a timely manner. We have different ways of storing products so that there's no cross-contamination. And all these things come from our food safety training that is part of even getting not a license, but there's a food service card that every food service worker has to have. And then every operation has to have at least one manager's card called ServSafe, or ServSafe is a brand, but there's others out there. And so those things are part and parcel to even being in the industry. But I love to quote John C. Maxwell, who is a leader in business industry, and he writes several books, and he talks about everything rises and falls on leadership. So while these are things that people do to get in the door in terms of getting the proper training and food handling training, it is a culture that has to be from the top down always emphasized. Several operations that have managed before, we would have things like a line tasting. And as boring as it is to sit there and taste 20 different items in a matter of 5 minutes to make sure that they meet the quality standards, the color standards, the freshness standards, and all those things, you do it. You have to go through it. You go down the line, you make sure everything is up to par, everything is at the proper temperature and all those things. So training and development is an ongoing thing in the industry, that it should not just be during a holiday season that you're emphasizing it, although it wouldn't hurt to put some more focus on that during those seasons. But training and development is an ongoing thing. Once you get it ingrained in your operation, whether you're doing 1,000 meals or you're doing 50 meals, it'll be something that is just part of the way we operate. The emphasis on safety and cleanliness is very important as well. So safety has to do with floors not being wet and or when spills happen, spills get wiped up quickly. People have proper knife handling skills. Traffic is a big thing in the restaurant industry because we're constantly clocking steps throughout sometimes a 20,000 square foot building and turning corners and things like that. So there's a certain amount of communication that we have in the restaurant business that we will use in order to keep safety at top of mind. So if I'm carrying something hot, well, first of all, I made a statement once before, but it holds true in the industry. So we're always supposed to stay to the right. Just like on the highway, when you're driving, you always stay to the right. I was running a crew once for actually not even in the food service industry, but I was working for Amazon and I made up this little jingle. It says, if you stay to the right, you won't have a fight. And so keeping those little things in your head and making sure that when you're carrying hot things, you're carrying heavy things, because you get somebody cut or hurt or injured and then blood can get into, God forbid, the food and those kind of things. Or an injured person is not a productive person. So now you're down one person trying to produce those 1,000 meals, for example. One of the other things that we sometimes overlook, and that's well-maintained, proper equipment and supplies. So if you have a malfunctioning oven or a malfunctioning grill, it's going to affect quality of your output. So you always want to keep that in mind. Keep a maintenance plan. For example, we get our hoods degreased quarterly. We get our grease traps emptied monthly. Those type of things. Properly maintained equipment and cleaned equipment will reduce any type of issues with safety and food safety. Rotation of inventory is very, very important. We have a thing called FIFO, first in, first out. So if that chicken came in on Monday, then we purchase more chicken on Wednesday, it's very important that we use the Monday's chicken first. And there are dot systems, labeling systems, dating systems that will help ensure that. Receiving orders from purveyors at the back door, very, very important. Checking quality. Is the fish, the gills of the fish, are they the right bright pink color? Are your oysters all still alive? Did the product come in the back door at the right temperature? The trucks that deliver these products, everything that happens from the warehouse to your back door is clocked based on the thermostat. So you can actually ask to see a copy of that report so you can show that product never went out of temperature from the time that they deliver it from the warehouse to you. And the same thing happens when they receive it from the local farms. The chicken is slaughtered and packed and put into a cold refrigerator, and the truck delivers it to the broadline distributor. There's tracking that goes on for temperature and time zones. So very important. Scheduling. This is one that I think that is not easy to do. You can get good at it. Because when you're scheduling and you're saying, well, I've got 1,000 of these going on, and I think I need 20 employees to make it happen, or I think I need 10 employees to make it happen. It's better to overstaff than to understaff. But if you overstaff too much, you can have congestion, people bumping into each other, people just standing around doing nothing, and then there's not efficiency. So it's a fine-tuned situation. And for Jamburritos, for the next 4 years, we have already projected a certain labor cost. We did that based on our hours of operation, our meal period times, how many people we'll need for the first shift, second shift, whatever, third shift. And then we put that into a spreadsheet and we say, okay, this is what we believe our percentages will be, percentages relevant to sales. So there's a thing called prime costs in the restaurant industry. So prime costs are cost of goods sold, labor, and taxes. those are all directly related to sales. So if I do $1 million in sales, I need a certain amount of food to satisfy that, but I also need a certain amount of labor to satisfy that. If I do $1.5 million, then that changes the labor issue. But more so than food, labor is more manageable because as you train and develop your staff, they become more efficient and they can handle more business. So the point here is fine tuning that over your years of operation to get it down to the most efficient way of taking care of your customers. And that's the key thing. You're not cutting staff to just save money. You're setting up your operation to operate at its optimum level. It's like an engine. You can put low-grade oil in the engine and it'll run, but you can put high-grade oil in the engine, pay a little bit more, and it'll run a lot more smoothly and maybe a lot longer. Let's see. We had a couple other things here I want to make mention of. So definitely watch your back door, practice reasonable scheduling. Don't let sick people work. Have a strong policy about that. If that person has a fever or anything like that, make sure that you are taking care of managing that well. Plan ahead for food prep. Order properly. I talked about that. Avoid last minute store runs. I'm guilty of this and I have been and I've gotten better at it, but didn't order enough. And guess what? Joe or Michael or Sam, I need you to run to the store. I'm out of this. I got to get it. And I get it fast. When you do that, you're breaking the cold chain in the food because when that truck is delivering for your back door, it's out of the danger zone. But when you send people to the store and it's putting it in their car and it's hot in the summer and you haven't been giving them the proper refrigeration or coolers or packaging or whatever, there's a strong chance that you could run into danger zones with product coming out of danger zones. So you have produce and it should live at a certain temperature. 35 to 38 degrees. You have seafood and so on and so forth. So it's more risk of running into that problem when you're doing last minute store runs. I don't believe you'll ever eliminate it 100%, but having a store run is better than just saying, hey, I'm out of it. I'm 86 in it, which in the restaurant business, it means you're out of it. And another way that I deal with outages is that I will have a special, and the special by mere mention of the fact that it's a special means that it's a limited supply and when it's gone, it's gone. But the staple items, I'm always cognizant of making sure that we don't run out. And finally, I think I already mentioned this about making sure your equipment is working optimally, knives sharp, refrigeration functional, hoods cleaned. And so I'm going to throw it back at you, Christian.
Yes, I agree. I especially cannot stress the importance enough of ensuring that equipment is functional because it's one thing when you can't get orders prepared properly due to malfunctioning equipment. It's something completely more tragic when malfunctioning equipment results in a large fire that burns down your entire premises and even resulting in injury or death. That's one thing that every restaurant owner should keep in mind. While we're talking about tragedy, that's why it's also important to make sure that food is prepared with safety in mind and that you're not just using whatever you can and skimping out on important steps just to get an order out the door. Get that order out the door efficiently, but keep food safety in mind. You don't want your customers getting sick because that will, for one thing, reflect very badly on your restaurant in general and its crew and its owner, but could also result in legal problems depending on how sick someone got or what type of sickness, what type of food poisoning they got due to the lack of proper preparation. Now, moving on to my next question, before the holidays even come, what should restaurants be doing to prepare for this time of the year? And I've said this in other episodes of BizCast before. In the business world, the holiday season starts in September or late August. For the consumer, it starts when Thanksgiving and Christmas come around. But in the business world, it starts as soon as fall gets here. As soon as back to school season is over, the holiday season begins in the business world. In general, what should restaurants be doing to prepare for said time of the year?
Good question, Christian. And I think it's very good that you pointed out that there's a difference between what the consumer considers to be the season and what the business owner has to understand as the season. And preparation is key in any business. Planning and it starts with setting realistic goals, sales goals. And sometimes you can use historic data to set those sales goals. There are many things that can affect those sales, reaching those sales goals. One of them could be, your staffing. Others could be what's the demographics, have they changed in your neighborhood and that kind of thing. So the first thing I would say is to set realistic goals and work backwards from those goals. So if your goal is to sell 1,000 turkey dinners on Thanksgiving, then you figure out what staffing you need, what kind of marketing you're going to do, how you're going to set your order guides. We're normally doing 500, but we're going to do 1,000. Where are we going to put all that food? Do we have enough storage for that food? I remember one time I did $10,000 in a weekend, I think it was 2-day weekend on the food truck. And I packed food in every area that I could. I must have used 1,000 pounds of ice to keep the fish cold. And I turned things into refrigerators to make it happen. Well, the first day we got so busy, I had to send somebody 30 miles, no, I think it was more like 60 miles down the hill to get more product for me. So looking at your capacity is very important. How big is your refrigeration, your dry storage? You have a walk-in box. How are you going to keep all this product? Normally you take 2 deliveries a week. You may have to take 4 deliveries that week because of your capacity. So setting realistic goals, hiring temps. I always had like a temp agency ready to go to if I was short on staff. You're not going to get the same performance out of a temp, but it's better than not having that person there as well. But when you get a temp, always remember that training still has to take place. And so you want to give simple instructions that will get them to be successful part of your team. Prepare your staff with the timely communications. This goes back to talked about marketing and communicating with operations. What we used to do is we had a thing called a pre-meal in our restaurant in New Jersey. So before any day, any event, including Mother's Day or Thanksgiving or whatever, we would sit down and we talk about what's on the menu, what the goals, sales goals are, chat it up a little bit, and then roll up our sleeves and get to work. And so communication is key. And sometimes the communication will be a little bit more intense than you would have in a normal operation. You may add more people in different positions that they're not used to working in. So again, it's about preparation. It's about preparing the people for the work. It's about trying to get everybody on the same page, working towards the same goal to provide great customer service to your guests. Menu planning and proper ordering, very important. The menu plan is your map. Your ordering is the product that you're going to prepare to get it to the mouths of your guests. So very important. There's a lot of software out there that you can use these days to help with that. You can actually scale up. You could say, okay, this year I'm doing 1,000 meals on Thanksgiving instead of 500. Last year I did 500. You go to your software and you say scale it up, times 2. And then it can produce your shopping list for you, your recipe cards, and all that fun stuff that basically gives people their marching orders. So yeah, that would be, I think, to answer your question, Christian, about what restaurants can do to prepare is plan, and plan some more, and then execute. Back to you, brother.
Yes, very well said. Early preparation is very important, especially when it comes to preparing for the busiest times of the year, not just the holidays, but any other peak seasons. The earlier that you prepare and have a game plan ready, you have lesser chances of failing, of facing major problems and issues with customers or internal operations later. I've always been a firm believer in making sure that you do your homework. And like you said, looking at historical data is one thing. You already know what your top sellers are going to be for the season, so you'll want to prepare wisely, make sure you have enough of them in stock. There is a lot of temporary hiring for the season in the retail world and in the restaurant world. Regardless of whether you plan to keep your temps on as permanent hires after the season's over, still have to train them regardless because they are joining your team to help assist an influx of customers that's expected to arrive in. Yes, it's important to make sure that you're able to cover all grounds without any problems. Speaking of problems, Michael, my next question for you is, during the holiday season, and I'm talking about just Thanksgiving, Christmas, and we can even talk about other holidays as well, like Mother's Day and Father's Day, where there's a lot of dining out. Where do restaurants drop the ball when it comes to ensuring that each customer is served properly? Where do you personally believe restaurants mess up at?
I go back to the over-promising and under-delivering. Well, the previous statement I made was under-promise and over-deliver, but oftentimes it's the end of the year. They need to make budget. They need to kind of herd business into their bank, cash flow system. And so it's like they'll operate in a way that is a little in desperation, maybe, or again, lack of preparation. So as far as dropping the ball, it's a perception when the ball is dropped. Like if I promise you something and don't deliver it, then I've dropped the ball. But if I don't promise something and I do deliver it, now I'm looking like the hero. So the opposite of under promising and over delivering is where the ball is typically dropped in terms of over promising and under delivering. I'm going to get it to you by X time, and it doesn't happen. Poor planning is where the ball is dropped. Poor communication is where the ball is dropped. Understaffing and under ordering is where the ball is dropped. Marketing and operations disconnected is also where the ball is dropped. What does that have as a net effect for the guest? Well, you're going to have challenges, right? But what happens, as I mentioned earlier, it's how you handle those challenges. Oftentimes you have staff members who are seeing all of these balls being dropped and they get frustrated, and they're the ones that are your frontline people dealing with the customer. And so they don't give good customer service because they're frustrated about what's not happening successfully in the place of where they're working. So I think as far as the ball being dropped, I think that people can actually, or businesses can actually minimize that happening, and it could happen in so many different ways. It could be cold food. It could be late food. It could be no food at all. It could be a lot of different things that could happen when you don't plan properly or when you don't execute well. But most importantly, I think, is how do you handle your mistakes? Are you going overboard to try to win back that customer? Are you honest with yourself? Hey, this was my fault. This should have never happened. And so this is not how we operate. And that all goes back to company values, core values. If your value is integrity, then you'll do like I did. And I'm not tooting my own horn, but it hurt to not get that money and to lose all that money. But that was an integrity issue. And if you're operating with a certain amount of core values, your staff will do the same thing. And I'll give you a quick example. I was in a restaurant. I don't know if I should mention the name or not, but it's a breakfast place. And my bill was going to be about $50. I had eggs Benedict and asked for my eggs poached very, very light. So I got one egg poached hard and the other egg light. I had already cut into it because that's the only way to figure out how it's cooked. So therefore, I had this whole blob of food on my plate and I just continue eating. But I tell the waitress, I said, "Okay, do me a favor. This was overcooked, so you can see it's overcooked. Can I have just bring me out another one? I'm not going to return the whole plate, so they have to make it all over again." So she brought me out a poached egg, and the next one that was done well. At the end, I saw a $2.50 price on my check. And I called her over. I said, "Hey, maybe this is a mistake, but that was the egg that replaced the bad egg that was on my plate." Next thing you know, the manager walks over to me and says, "You ate that egg, so now you're going to pay for it." Now, $50 check now, remind you. And she's fighting with me over $2.50 egg, which was not prepared properly in the first place. Well, she got really rude. I said, "If you want to go that direction, I'm going to call corporate and I'm going to also write a bad review." So you know what she said? She said, "Go ahead. They're going to back me up." So all I could surmise at that point was at the very top, that's how they operated. And she was given license to operate in that way. As silly as that is, you're going to fight over it. An egg that probably cost you 30 cents, and you're not going to fess up to your mistake, and you're going to possibly lose me as a customer. It was my first time there. That to me doesn't make any sense. If I was a corporate officer, I would make sure that never happened again to anyone. So I wrote a letter to corporate office. It's been over a year, and I haven't heard one thing from the corporate office. And guess what? She was absolutely right. She and corporate were on the same page. And that's sad, but that's what happened. And so dropping the ball it starts from the top down if they allow that to happen. Back to you, Christian.
Yes, that is quite unfortunate that had to happen. And here's my 2 cents on that. First of all, there is no room in the business world for rudeness towards a customer. I mentioned in a previous episode of BizCast my experience dealing with a rude employee at Popeyes, and I'm not going to go into too much detail about that now, but there's no room for that. For one thing, first impressions count. They stick for life. That was your first time eating at that restaurant, and they basically treated you like dirt. Unacceptable. That's beyond unacceptable right there. If that were me, I would never go back there again. Yes, I would write a review. I would contact corporate, but because the first impression I had was so bad from the undercooked egg to the rude service, that would be enough to tell me to never set foot in that establishment again. I would never go back. There is no room for being rude to customers. Now, I've always believed that even if a customer is being rude to the staff, you're still supposed to be kind and polite back to the rude customer. Now, you weren't rude in this case. You were right. You did the right thing. But I'm just saying, in general, if a customer is being rude to the staff, it should always be a rule of thumb for staff and management to never stoop to the level of the rude customer. You want to be better than that. You don't want to act immature like they are, but you handled it well. You were mature. You pointed out their mistakes. You called out their flaws, just like I would have. She was being rude and immature and acting extremely, honestly, extremely snobbish. She felt that because she was a manager and on good terms with corporate office, that she was basically a queen. That's not a professional way to behave as somebody in management. I sure hate to see how she treats all the people who work under her as subordinates in the restaurant. So, Michael, shifting topics, my next question for you is, what is the best way to bundle menu items for the holidays to ensure that customers get the most value while maintaining good profit margins for the restaurant? So I read an article right after Thanksgiving. It was about Red Lobster, and it was about their ultimate endless shrimp deal that is very popular. It's a hotly popular special. They've been doing it for 18 years. However, due to the special becoming so popular, they realized that they were not making any profit off of it because the price point was too low. It started out at $20, then it went up to $22, and now they had to settle at $25 because this was all people were ordering. So they're not making a lot of money at such a low pricing point. It may be hotly popular, but at $25 for endless amounts of shrimp, there was really no profit because it costs the restaurant a lot of money to obtain shrimp. So if they're only charging $25 to serve one customer endless shrimp, they're not really getting a return on investment. See what I mean? So for the holidays, what can restaurants do to solve that problem? What can they do to make sure that when they're bundling menu items or offering promotions that involve an endless amount of one menu item, how can customers still get a lot of value while maintaining good profit margin for the restaurant?
Great question, Christian. Bundling and offering special deals and attracting people to your restaurant during hours that maybe normally are not so busy. These are a lot of things that we do in the business. Some of them are considered loss leaders, which means I know I'm going to lose money on this thing, but when you come in, I'll make money on that. So supermarkets do it all the time. They'll have ready-made cooked food. For example, Kroger, I can go and get a whole chicken for $8 cut up fried. I can go to Costco and get a whole rotisserie chicken for $6, and there's really no profit in that. But notice how the rotisserie chicken is all the way at the back of the store, which means that you have to pass all of these high profit margin items. So the first thing I would say about Red Lobster, and I'm one of those people who like to look underneath the rug and see really why people do what they do or why something is being posted in the media. This happened to be posted on ABC. Somebody probably wrote a press release, sent it to ABC. The question is, what did the press release say? Was it strategic for getting more marketing, for getting more word out about Red Lobster? Or was it truly just, them wanting to report on a business challenge that Red Lobster had? So we sometimes don't know. But the first thing that I would say I have said reading this is how? How do you not know that you're going to lose money? Or how do you not know that it's going to be unprofitable? That's like that's the ABCs of selling food. You either decide something is going to be a loss leader and you're going to not make a profit, but you're going to have other areas where you can make a profit by attracting that customer, that guest, or you're going to do something which I doubt a company as old as Red Lobster and as embedded in the industry as the Darden Group who runs Red Lobster would ever set out something not knowing what the forecast was. So it's a real simple process. I buy an apple for $1, in this case, it's shrimp, and I sell it for $3 or $4. That's the normal profit margin that will cover labor and operating expenses. So too popular. I don't know. It kind of sounds like a headline, of course, that would, get people's attention, but too popular should not be a negative thing. And it should actually be a positive thing. But this is sort of like an oxymoron, the way it was being put out there. So back to your original question about, how bundles can be put together to help restaurant businesses make profits and bring in new clientele. Well, firstly, I never really used the word bundle in the industry. It just sounds more like a computer concept or something that you would see. AT&T might have a bundle. So when it comes to the food industry, we never really use the term bundle, but we might use the term package or, something like that. And when it comes to packaging, the idea is that it is complete. It tends to address the needs of the situation. So if I'm making a package deal, you say you go to McDonald's, you have a package deal, you have a number one special, which has the complete meal, right? It has the sandwich, the fries, and the beverage. And then one can say, well, you know what? I can make another package, which actually includes like a dessert. The idea behind all of that is you're meeting a demand, and that demand is making you sell more volume. If I ordered the burger, the fries, the beverage, and the dessert a la carte or separately, the idea is that I'm going to spend more money than the menu package if I were to have a collaborator. What it does for me as a restaurateur, it makes me move more inventory. It gives me more sales, ultimately, but at a slightly less profit. The one thing I would say, if any restaurant person is looking to put together certain packages, that it's important to understand the market that they're catering to. So if there is a huge residential market in that area, they may package deals may be a strong benefit because you have families that would love to get, have these packages because they can feed more people at a lesser price. If you're in a more of an industrial area, or I should say maybe even a business area, packages may not be the big deal because, everybody's eating individually at their desk, in their cars, and so on and so forth. So understanding your market is important to putting together any bundle or package. Considering the season is important. Of course, the biggest package deal season that go on are Thanksgiving. People these days are just not cooking. Even family reunions often have it catered. So now you want, to feed 10 people, 20 people, whatever that number is, packages deals are good. And you're looking at, getting everything from soup to nuts. You want your turkey, you want your ham, you want your mashed potatoes, you want your gravy, you want your green beans, how it goes. Let's see. I think that another thing that is really important to consider when doing packages is who your target market is. We kind of touched on that, but these days, I think the millennials, the Gen X's and the Gen Zers, which are the up and coming spenders now when it comes to food, what they're looking for is value and service and convenience. So how do you get these packages to them? How do they get them? Can they order it online on their phones? Those kinds of things. Can they scan a QR code? These are the different things that will come into play when you're looking at putting together your packages. Also, packaging should reflect the concept that your restaurant is all about. It also is important to try to line up your inventory with your packages. So, for example, I'm opening up a Cajun Creole restaurant. I don't think it would make sense for me to start packaging something that has Italian sausage or ziti or any of those other items because it just doesn't fall in line with my theme and my concept. And then, the bundle or the package that we're looking to have should have a forecast of profitability, a forecast of sales, forecast of what the labor would be to provide these things and fit within the equipment that you have in your operation to make sure that you can produce the product in a timely fashion. So I would say all those things considered would be helpful to put together any package that you want. Back to you, Christian.
Those were some great insights, Michael. Being that you are a restaurateur, you know exactly what you're talking about. And I must say that I am impressed with how well you describe that process and what other restaurant owners should be looking into, what they should be forecasting. They should be looking into costs related to operations. Earlier in the show, you mentioned cost of goods sold. That's also very important to remember as well. How much you're going to put into labor. These are all very important factors to take take into consideration when trying to determine a pricing point, not just in the restaurant industry, but in any industry. How much does it cost to obtain a product? How much does it cost labor-wise? How many other operational costs are taken into account? And then, of course, how much value will the customer receive overall in the end? Pricing, I consider it to be one of the hardest things to look at in any business, because you have to look into all these different factors, and customers, when they're looking for deals, they're always going to go for the lowest price business they can find. They're going to compare all the competitors in the area. They're going to see which one has the best deal, which one offers the most value for the least amount of money. And that can be a little hard to do, especially in the restaurant world where there are a lot of costs involved, a lot of operational costs. And then, of course, restaurants also have to deal with spending a lot of money to obtain products. So, like I said, I know I just mentioned this, but it's basically how can restaurants make the most profit while still offer the most value to the customer at the lowest price? And going back to Red Lobster, I do want to make a small correction to something you said earlier. The Darden Group does not run Red Lobster anymore. They sold Red Lobster in 2014 to Golden Gate Capital due to poor sales. And in 2020, another company purchased Red Lobster from Golden Gate Capital called Thai Union. And as of November 2023, they feel that the chain is rather beleaguered at the moment. They're struggling, and they are also exploring a sale. It's rather unfortunate. The company has been in a financial funk since 2014, and we're about to enter 2024, so only time will tell what will happen to them in general. But yes, Michael, you had a lot of great key points there.
Thanks for that correction. I knew I was probably wrong since that Darden probably sold it. And I think I heard about that. So thanks for lining those things up. But it just brought something to my mind in terms of, Red Lobster's been around for a long time. And you've got people shuffling around ownership of Red Lobster. And, one would think if they're so beleaguered, if they're so in dire straits, that they would go, bye-bye, right? And I just came from the movies watching this movie with my wife, Ferrari. And what really struck me about business was why Ferrari, who was losing money all the time, was still around. And Maserati, was trying to buy them. Ford tried to buy them. And Enzo Ferrari, he wasn't really a car manufacturer. He manufactured cars so he could race, whereas other people race cars to increase the manufacturing of cars. So he only put out like 100 cars a year. And in order to survive, he was going to have to put out 400 cars a year. But here's the thing that I'm trying to bring to a point. Some companies are almost too big to fail. And what I noticed about Ferrari was he lived in a really, really expensive house. He had a mistress that he put up in another big house. He rode cars, yet his company was not profitable. How do you figure that? So could be a little bit off the conversation, but behind the scenes, what happens in the restaurant industry, it could be perplexing why some place all of a sudden shut down, or why some places should be shut down, but last forever.
Yes, I see. Sometimes we really have to hit those hard times to truly realize what our true potential are. And that is what Ferrari realized. They realized that in order to truly be successful, to survive in the world, they had to learn what their faults were first. Why are they not profitable? Once you realize why your business is not profitable, then you can take action and start to turn things around. Now look at where Ferrari is now. They're one of the most upscale brand of cars in the world. They're right up there with Rolls-Royce. And it's all about just ensuring that you know what your faults are. Too many people overlook their faults, especially in business, and this can lead to your downfall. If you don't know when to take action right away, you are going to possibly fail because you're not able to pinpoint exactly what is causing your overall downward spiral. But yes, that's a very good point, and I would like to see that movie myself. In fact, I'm probably going to check it out sometime soon.
One of the points that I was making with Ferrari was how companies can overspend, company can bleed, but the owners can still live a lavish lifestyle. If they didn't make certain personal decisions, perhaps their businesses would grow. Like even pointed to the fall in 2008 of Wall Street. And so many people lost their jobs, but the people that were responsible, the bankers that were responsible for making these bad loans were given promotions and bonuses. I'm not really sure, and maybe that's another podcast, where that would go, but it's something that we have in business to deal with, and that's with managing money. And some companies can stick around just because, like in Ferrari's case, they stuck around because they said that they're an institution. And so that's why other companies, even the government, didn't want to let them fail.
Yes, that's true. It is rather unfortunate that whenever companies go out of business, usually the big wigs at the top walk away with billions of dollars while all of their frontline employees are sent home with pink slips and scrambling to find a job in order to feed their families. It's always a win-lose situation when a large corporation goes under. The bigwigs at the top and the shareholders are usually the ones that go home with all the money. The little guy, the people who actually kept that company going, the frontline workers, they're the ones who get sent home with no money, and in some cases they don't receive their final paycheck because the company had run out of money. You're right, Michael. That is another episode that I would like to make. That's a great idea, and I thank you for that. I would like to talk more about that in detail for another episode. Shifting our focus to our final question, this goes back to what we were talking about at the very beginning of the show. We've discussed people who were scammed out of all their money trying to purchase Thanksgiving meals from a small company that was operating out of their garage. We've talked about families who didn't get their Thanksgiving meals because the restaurant simply ran out of inventory. So my last question for you is about those two unfortunate topics, and that is, what can restaurants do to step in and help customers who are victims of such unfortunate events? What can they do to help them because they were not able to get their meals at the restaurants that they were purchasing from? What can they step in to do and help them?
Well, that's a tough question because the only way that they would know about it is if the customer came to them and told them. The only thing that I could think of at this point would be advertising that they're the go-to spot. In other words, let's say I'm aware of this happening. Okay. And so what I might do is my company is start a campaign that says, while the others may let you down, we're here. We're always around. And I told you, I did not write that down. I just came out of my mouth, but it rhymed. So like, think about the hotel, Motel 6, whatever they say. We always keep the lamp on for you, right? What does that do? That distinguishes them from every other motel off the highway that, when everything else fails, they're always going to be there. They're always going to have a room. So the only way me, as someone who was scammed or who didn't get what was promised to me, to have a go-to company to take care of me is to know about it. Because they're advertising it. They're making it known. Maybe if I tried to put myself in that scenario, maybe it's Thanksgiving, maybe it's the last minute. My turkey dinners that was supposed to be catered fell through. In real life, probably what I would do is run to HEB. I know that they always have enough. I know that they have a lot of opportunity for me to put together something pretty quickly. Some other areas might have other supermarkets that do that very well. Maybe it's Costco or whatever. But if I'm the customer, if I'm the guest, and I'm in that position, it has to be top of mind for me how to solve that problem. And top of mind only happens from creative marketing, from knowing about that go-to company that can fix what was broken. And typically, I think that's what people do, They have an on-deck option, a go-to. It may be a little stretching of this point, but as a chef, I can go out to the most expensive restaurants. But there's one thing that I'll always do before I go to the restaurant because I want to protect my hunger pains. So I create appetizers at home that I know I'm going to enjoy. So then when I go out to the restaurant, if it's bad, hey, guess what? I'm not having these hunger pains because I've already been satisfied. If it's good, it's just icing on the cake. In a situation where you're trying a new company for catering, for a family event or what have you, and they drop the ball on you, or it happens to be a legitimate scam, then I would say something that's important is that you might want to have a backup. And that backup has to be open, obviously. Sometimes on holidays, a lot of places are closed. And basically, you may not get everything that you wanted from the first company. But, sometimes mistakes lead to better opportunities. Today, for example, I'm making black eyed peas for the new year. And I did not have all of my holy trinity, which is the onion, bell pepper, and celery, all that good stuff. But guess what? It was what I have. And so I am making it with peppers and garlic and parsley and other stuff, but I'm using a few dry seasonings to make up for those that I don't have, like celery seed and so forth. So I know it's disappointing when you get scammed or something doesn't happen that you expect to happen and the business disappoints you, but it's not the end of the world. You sometimes find better solutions, better opportunities, and you might even find a company that does it better. So next year you use them and have a good time no matter what.
Right. Sadly, it was a costly lesson learned for both the restaurant and the customer. And it was very unfortunate to see these things happen. But you're right, Michael. It is always important to have a backup plan because you never know what could happen. Now, a backup plan is especially important if you are the type of person who invites a lot of people over for the holidays every year. A lot of families will often invite their relatives over for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and also for New Year's as well. New Year's is another holiday where a lot of people like to eat. Yes, they like to party on New Year's Eve, but on New Year's Day, they'll have a typical get-together where they serve food, and it's important for everybody to know that around this time of the year, always prepare for the absolute worst and always be ready for the unexpected because you never know what could happen. If you have to go to H-E-B or Kroger, and some people did in this case, that may be what you have to do. You may have to find a meal that's already cooked and that you could serve easily to several people. My heart certainly does go out to the people who were unable to get their meals this year, either because they got scammed or the restaurant they ordered from simply screwed them over. There was a lot of media attention towards these unfortunate events, and Channel 2, the NBC station in Houston, they stepped in for one of the families, went to their door and provided them some food out of the kindness of their hearts after they were not unable to get their food. And that was a nice gesture on their behalf. But yes, at the time of us taping this, the holidays are already about to be over. We just have New Year's Day left. And it's a lesson learned. I feel that all the people who are not fortunate to get their meals the way they wanted to get them this year will learn their lesson for next year and plan accordingly. And guess what? The holidays technically are not over after New Year's, because guess what comes right after New Year's Day? Valentine's Day, and then Easter, and then you got Mother's Day and Father's Day. These are also holidays that are also hotly popular with restaurants. People do celebrate these days by going out to eat. So with that being said, restaurant owners, make sure you are ready for this next set of holidays that I just mentioned. And customers, please make sure that you have a backup plan as well, just in case your plan A fails. But yes, that's pretty much my final 2 cents there. Thank you once again for joining me on the show, Michael. It's always a pleasure to have you. Do you have any final statements you would like to make as we close out?
Well, yes, Chris, and thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure. And the topics that you choose to talk about are very, very important. And I believe the listeners are going to be blessed by it. I would just say that, though we have people that are out there maybe giving us a bad name in this industry, there are many, many, many good operators out there that have a gift and a calling to serve and to provide. So I would say just continue to seek out those companies, put minimal investment until you find out that they can actually deliver on their promises, and then that's when you can start to give them the larger events for special times in your lives. Know that, if it quacks like a duck, then it's probably a duck, and use your discernment, but don't be afraid to go out and try new people. I'd say 99.9% of the people in this industry are here to serve and to make sure that they deliver on their promises. So take care, God bless, and Happy New Year to everyone.
Happy New Year, Michael. I know that 2024 is going to be a great year, and I especially look forward to working with you in terms of getting Jamburritos' online presence going. That's going to be very exciting. I certainly wish you the best. It's going to be a very busy year for both of us. God bless as well, Michael. Thanks again for being on the show.
You got it. Take care.